Okay, so today we're going to dive into some really interesting material that you brought excerpts from Maximize Your Metabolism by Christopher Guerriero. And basically, we're going to kind of try to cut through it all and get to the key insights and actionable advice that people can use to really understand how their metabolism works.
Right.
And maybe more importantly, how they can really dial it up.
Absolutely. And you get a sense right away of his, his big picture vision, right?
Yeah.
He says the company goal is to improve the world one body at a time.
Wow.
So that's pretty ambitious right there. And, he's got some really great endorsements too.
Yeah, he does. Bob Proctor, who a lot of people know from You Were Born Rich, he says that it uniquely blends this idea of personal fitness with personal growth. And it says a really fast track to boosting your energy levels. And then Vince Pacente, who's an Olympic athlete, calls him a guru and says this is really cutting edge stuff. He's got a holistic approach to it that brings together both the art and science of personal health.
Yeah, it's very much kind of the combination of so the thinking side of things and the physical side of things.
Yeah.
Which is a nice way to approach it.
It is, yeah. And then there's some compelling real-world results that we see from people saying they're losing fat, they're feeling more energetic using the methods. And then there's a quote here where a personal trainer keeps the book at his desk, says it's a go-to for a lot of things. So.
It shows you its practical application.
It does, yeah.
It's something you can actually put to work.
And then the preface itself is, it's pretty interesting. It suggests that sometimes formal education can actually get in the way of practical application. And he describes his approach as a deep dive into it, a multidisciplinary exploration to create a guide that anyone can use to really master their metabolism.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big takeaways is this idea that, you're not stuck with the metabolism that you have.
Right.
He argues that it's quite flexible, actually, and that you can change it significantly in a relatively short period with the right combination of, what you eat, how you move, and even how you think.
Okay.
So it's pretty hopeful.
It is, yeah.
For those of us who are, maybe not as happy with their metabolism as they could be.
Right, and the book promises to uncover the secrets to attaining balance in your body by bringing all these different elements together. Okay, so let's kind of dig into this now. And I think the first crucial area that he addresses is understanding metabolism itself.
Right, and he points out right away that there are several things that are usually at play here. One is your history of dieting.
Right.
Particularly if you've done a lot of these rapid weight loss attempts.
Right.
And then your age, obviously. Yeah. As we get older, our metabolism tends to slow down a bit.
Yeah, about 2% every decade after young adulthood.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then obviously the third thing is how active you are.
Right, and he makes a really important point.
Yeah.
That when it comes to kind of revving up your metabolism, not all activity is created equal.
Right.
Some types of exercise have a much bigger impact than others.
And I think a lot of people feel like their metabolism is just something that happens to them.
Right.
And they feel frustrated because they're like, well, I'm trying to control it and it's not working.
Yeah.
And, the standard advice is, just cut your calories and you'll be fine. But the problem is that for a lot of people, that doesn't work long term.
Right.
Because frankly, willpower only takes you so far.
Yeah.
And most of us have pretty busy lives and we're juggling a lot of things.
It's true.
And so, just relying on calorie restriction, can backfire because it doesn't address the underlying, metabolic function.
And your body can start to adapt to that and maybe even start storing more fat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your body gets very good at adapting to what you're doing to it.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
He's very clear that this isn't just another fad diet. He presents it as a blueprint, a strategy for achieving a higher metabolic rate. And the focus is not just on shedding pounds, but it's also about changing how your body actually uses the food you eat and gets rid of waste.
Yeah. And that's a key distinction, I think.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of diets are focused on like, okay, we got to reduce the calories that are coming in.
Right.
But he's saying you got to think about how efficiently your body is actually utilizing those calories and how effectively it's getting rid of the stuff that it doesn't need.
Right. And that higher metabolic rate gives you some breathing room. It means you're not constantly stressing about every single calorie.
Exactly.
It can be a buffer if you have an occasional treat and you don't have to, freak out about it.
Exactly. And I think that's something that people really struggle with. They feel like they can never indulge it at all.
Right.
And, he's saying, if you get your metabolism working properly, you can actually have those indulgences without feeling guilty.
And it really shifts how you think about eating, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He emphasizes the importance of eating the right things at the right times.
Yeah.
And that's so different from these restrictive diets that leave you feeling deprived and guilty about food.
Exactly. And he's very clear that he doesn't want people to feel bad about eating.
Right.
He says that should not be the case.
Right.
Eating should be something that you enjoy.
Yeah.
That fuels you.
Right.
That makes you feel good. And that, is a natural part of life.
So we've talked about, understanding your metabolism and kind of, making peace with food in a way. But now he goes into this other area, the power of the mind.
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think.
Yeah.
Because he makes this argument that, your mental focus has a profound effect on your overall health.
Yeah.
And even on how you look.
Yeah, and he quotes some pretty, big thinkers here.
He does, yeah.
He's got Napoleon Hill in here. That great quote, "Whatever the human mind can conceive and believe it can achieve."
Powerful stuff.
It is, yeah. And then William James,
right.
Kind of saying that believing in your success at the very beginning is kind of a key ingredient for actually achieving it.
Absolutely. And I think, what's fascinating here is how he connects this mental strength to a successful metabolic enhancement program.
Right.
He's saying that, it shouldn't just result in losing fat. It should actually improve your overall health in a lasting way.
Right. And the importance of sticking with it.
Absolutely.
It can't be overstated.
Right.
He emphasizes how crucial it is to maintain those changes in diet and exercise and how setting those clear goals can really help you stay on track.
Right. And he breaks down goal setting into 4 key steps.
Right.
Which I think are really helpful.
Yeah.
So the first one is, make sure your goals are specific.
Okay.
Don't just say, I want to get healthier.
Right.
Really define what that looks like for you.
Yeah.
The second thing is, think about the benefits of achieving those goals.
Right.
How will it actually improve your life?
Okay.
Write those down. Third, set a realistic timeline.
Right.
Without a deadline, it's easy to just kind of let things slide.
Right.
And then fourth, proactively plan for potential setbacks.
Right.
Think about, what might make you slip up and how you're going to handle those situations.
That's great advice.
Yeah. And, that idea of the dieting logbook, I think is really helpful too, as a way to kind of track your progress.
Right.
And remind yourself of why you're doing this.
Yeah. Keep that motivation strong.
Exactly.
And then he talks about the subconscious mind, explaining how it basically stores everything. Even things you might not consciously remember. And the implication is that by focusing on positive thoughts, you can have a positive influence on this really powerful part of your mind.
Absolutely. And so, it's not just about hoping for the best. It's about actually creating this mental landscape that's going to support your goals.
Right.
And he says, once you're truly committed and you have that strong desire, your mind will actually start to gravitate towards thoughts that are aligned with what you want to achieve.
Okay, so now we kind of move into the more physical side of things.
Right.
And he's got this section, Unleashing Your Metabolism. And he starts by talking about how our enzyme systems naturally change as we get older and as our lifestyles change.
And the problem is that our eating habits often don't keep up with that.
Right. They don't adapt.
They don't adapt, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, he talks about how the body's constantly trying to adapt to its environment.
Yeah.
Part of that is, adjusting how many enzymes it's producing based on things like age and, how active you are, your sleep patterns, all these kinds of things.
If you think of enzymes as those little workers in your body breaking down food, raw foods are packed with them and they help with digestion and nutrient absorption. But when we cook food, we lose a lot of those crucial helpers.
And that can put more strain on our digestive system, make it harder for us to absorb the nutrients we need.
And he warns about this kind of poisonous result of consistently feeding your body the wrong kinds of foods. It leads to a buildup of all these substances that you don't really want.
Exactly.
And he specifically mentions constipation as a sign that things aren't running smoothly.
Yeah, and he introduces this idea of a cleanse. And so, this weekly cleanse that he recommends is pretty specific.
Yeah.
You start your day with lemon juice in distilled water.
Right.
You wait a little bit before you eat.
Mm-hmm.
And then you focus on freshly juiced fruits and vegetables, preferably organic.
Right.
And then vegetable soup that doesn't have any added salt.
Okay. And he also gives specific guidelines for how much water to drink during the cleanse.
Right.
1 cup for every 14 pounds of your body weight.
Yeah, which is a bit more than the usual recommendation of 1 cup for every 20 pounds.
Right. And he's very clear that he means pure water.
Right.
Not other kinds of drinks.
Exactly. Not soda, not juice, not coffee, just pure water.
Right.
And then he kind of connects this back to, how well our digestive systems are functioning overall.
Yeah.
He talks about how, poor eating habits.
Right.
Like skipping breakfast, having a big lunch, constantly snacking throughout the day.
Right.
Can really overwork your digestive system.
Right. And this brings him back to the cleanse.
Right.
Emphasizing that any significant changes you make to your diet should ideally start with this initial cleanse.
Right.
It's about preparing your body for a more effective metabolic shift.
And he points to the statistic that, something like 95% of people who diet don't keep the weight off long term.
That's discouraging.
Yeah, it is kind of discouraging. And it really underscores, I think, his belief that, your metabolism is so much more critical than just trying to reduce calories.
He breaks it down into kind of 3 main ways.
Right.
Our bodies burn energy, resting metabolic rate, which is just the energy you burn, just being alive, your activity levels, and then what's called the thermic effect of food, the energy that your body uses to digest what you eat.
Yeah, and so he's saying, understanding those 3 components, your resting rate, your activity, and then the thermic effect of food can really empower you to target each one of those for metabolic improvement.
Rather than just focusing on calorie deficits.
Exactly.
Right.
And essentially, your body's burning calories just by digesting the food you eat.
Right.
And certain types of food, like protein,
right,
require more energy to break down, so they have a slightly higher thermic effect.
Right. And then he talks about the adaptive effect, which is kind of that yo-yo dieting cycle where you repeatedly put your body through these severe calorie restrictions.
Right.
And it can actually train it to become more efficient at storing nutrients.
Exactly. And that's why it gets harder and harder to lose weight.
Right.
You know, the more you do these kinds of crash diets, your body's like, okay, I'm going to hold on to everything I can get.
Right.
Because I don't know when the next famine is coming.
Right. Yeah.
So,
but he's also saying that you can actually train your metabolism to speed up by making the right changes.
Exactly. And so, it's not all doom and gloom.
Right.
Our bodies are remarkably adaptable.
Right.
And so if we can, train our metabolism to slow down, we can also train it to speed up.
And a key part of that is eating the correct percentages of fat, carbohydrates, and proteins.
Exactly. It's not just about the total number of calories.
Right.
It's about that balance of macronutrients.
And he's suggesting that a lot of us have unknowingly trained our bodies to primarily rely on carbohydrates for energy.
Right.
Which then leads to, the card cravings and the release of insulin. And then when there's more insulin than needed, tends to store that as fat.
Yeah.
And so
to kind of get a better understanding of this, he recommends doing a little bit of self-monitoring.
Right.
Keeping a food journal for about a week.
Yeah.
To really track how many carbohydrates you're actually consuming. So you can get a clearer picture of your current eating habits.
And when it comes to preparing your food, he advises focusing on methods like baking, broiling, steaming, or eating vegetables raw, using very little oil.
Right.
And this all kind of sets the stage for his 3-phase eating program.
Right. And this is where he gets into the specifics of, what you should actually be eating.
Right.
So this program involves, cycling through 3 different diets.
Right.
Diet #1 for 2 days.
Okay.
Diet #2 for 2 to 3 days. diet #3 for the remaining 2 to 3 days.
Okay.
And then you repeat the cycle.
Okay.
And the goal of that initial phase 1 is to help your body, shed fat and excess water.
Right.
But also to prepare your metabolism for the subsequent phases.
He gives an example of a typical day.
He does, yeah.
In phase 1 diet, #3, warm water with lemon juice grits or cream of rice, egg whites, spinach, water-packed tuna, brown rice turkey breast, and mixed salads.
All right, so it's a pretty clean diet.
It is, yeah.
Lots of lean protein, lots of vegetables,
right,
complex carbohydrates.
And then he has some general guidelines.
He does, yeah.
Emphasizing avoiding things like butter, margarine, and oil.
Right.
And even limiting fat-free alternatives during the first couple of weeks.
Yeah. And then he kind of emphasizes, the role of these live enzymes, which are mostly found in raw vegetables.
Yeah.
And he explains how these enzymes are crucial for properly breaking down proteins and fats during digestion.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, cooking and processing destroys a lot of those enzymes.
So it's really important to have those raw foods.
It is, yeah.
In your diet.
Absolutely.
We can't talk about metabolism without talking about water.
We can't, no.
And Guerriero really emphasizes how important water is.
Yeah.
It makes up about 70% of our body weight.
It does, yeah.
And it's absolutely essential for staying alive for all our bodily functions. And he warns that not drinking enough water can trigger a survival response in the body, leading to water retention.
Exactly. So it's kind of counterintuitive.
It is.
You think, if I don't drink water, I'll lose water weight.
Right.
But actually, your body starts to hold on to water.
Because it thinks it's in a drought.
Exactly.
And then he points out how those sugary drinks and sodium-rich drinks can actually make your body need more pure water.
Absolutely.
And then he makes a direct link between enzymes and water, explaining that enzymes just simply can't do their job if you're not properly hydrated.
They need that water to function properly.
And he debunks that common idea that food naturally contains enough enzymes even after it's been cooked.
Exactly.
He says that's not true, that the heat and processing really do reduce that natural enzymatic activity.
So, the moral of the story is eat your raw vegetables.
Okay, so now we get into metabolic superchargers. And he's talking about dietary supplements here.
Right. And this is a big area because I think, a lot of people are taking supplements, but there's also a lot of debate about whether they're effective or not.
Right.
So Guerriero kind of wades into this whole area, acknowledging their potential role, but also kind of emphasizing the importance of being discerning, and really educating yourself.
So he takes kind of a balanced view.
He does, yeah.
Saying that some supplements could help boost your metabolism, improve how you perform physically, and change your body composition. And one reason for this, he suggests, is that, our soil is not as nutrient-rich as it used to be.
Yeah. Modern farming practices, have depleted the soil somewhat.
Yeah.
And then, there's the whole issue of pesticides, and herbicides, and all that stuff that's in our food supply.
Right.
So he's saying, supplements can help fill in those gaps.
Right. And then he mentions a specific supplement that he prefers.
He does, yeah.
A 100% natural plant-based powdered nutritional drink.
Yeah.
Right. And then he gets into some specific supplements talking about, what they're claimed to do for metabolism.
Right.
But also importantly, pointing out potential downsides.
Yeah, it's not just like a sales pitch. He's actually giving you both sides of the story.
Right. So for bitter melon, he mentions its potential to help control your appetite and regulate blood sugar.
Right.
He even mentions a research study that supports that.
And then there's guarana,
right,
which is a source of caffeine, which can potentially suppress your appetite and have a thermogenic effect, particularly when it's combined with ephedra.
Right. And then there's coleus fuscoi,
right,
which is, he says, can help to break down fat, prevent new fat from being made, increase thyroid hormone, and help release stored fatty acids.
Yeah, and he actually refers to some studies here.
He's
even a specific dosage that was mentioned in one study.
Okay.
And then we have vanadium, which he says has effects that are similar to insulin.
Okay.
So it can potentially help with carbohydrate metabolism and reducing appetite.
Okay.
Although he does warn that some people might not like the taste.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind.
And then there's glucosamine sulfate,
right,
which is mentioned for a particular patented form
Right.
that is claimed to bind fat in your digestive system.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's chromium, which is discussed for its role in burning fat and affecting cholesterol levels. But he includes a warning here.
He does.
Against using chromium picolinate because of potential risks.
Yeah. He says that one can be harmful.
Okay.
So stay away from chromium picolinate.
And then there's androstenedione, which
is a bit of a controversial one.
It is. Yeah, he mentions it for its potential to increase testosterone.
Yeah.
But he immediately follows that up with a list of serious side effects.
Yeah.
And a recommendation against using it.
Yeah, he basically says, don't mess with this one.
Okay.
It's not worth the risk.
Right.
And then there's 5-HTP.
Right.
Which something that might suppress appetite and aggravate your mood.
Okay.
But he points out a possible link to EMS. And he notes that the FDA doesn't recommend it.
Right.
So again.
So proceed with caution.
Exactly. Yeah. Do your research.
Now, importantly, he also talks about supplements that don't have much scientific evidence to support their claims of boosting metabolism.
Yeah, he's not just promoting supplements willy-nilly.
Right.
He's actually saying, you know, some of these are not worth your time or money.
So he mentions citrus aurantium.
Right, which is also known as bitter orange.
Right.
And he says that, you know, it does contain synephrine, which is similar to ephedra.
Right.
But the amounts are likely too small to make a significant difference.
Okay.
And he cites a study on orange peel extract.
Right.
That kind of backs that up.
And then there's hydroxycitric acid, which comes from Garcinia cambogia.
Yeah, that was a really popular one for a while.
It was, yeah.
And he says that, you know, early research suggested it might block the conversion of carbohydrates to fat.
Okay.
But more recent clinical data, including a study that he references, shows that it doesn't really have much of an effect on weight loss or how much energy you find.
So be careful about, you know, the marketing hype around these things.
Yeah. You know, just because something is popular or it's being promoted heavily doesn't mean it actually works.
Okay. And then he wraps up the supplement section with some good general advice.
He does, yeah.
Always do your research.
Right.
Follow the instructions on the product. Avoid taking very high doses. And most importantly, talk to your healthcare professional before starting any new supplement.
Yeah, it's always good to get professional advice before you start experimenting with things.
Okay, so now we move on to exercise.
Okay.
And he's got this section called Lift More Now, Way Less Forever.
Catchy title.
It is, yeah. And he's really making a strong case here.
He is.
For anaerobic training, for strength training, as being more effective than aerobics for controlling how many calories you burn and for weight loss.
And this might surprise some people who, you know, mainly think of cardio when they think about exercise.
Yeah.
But he's arguing that while aerobic exercise has its benefits, you know, strength training is really the key to building a strong metabolism.
Okay.
Reducing fat and increasing the density of your muscles.
Right.
Without necessarily making you weigh more.
Right, because muscle is...
Exactly. Muscle's more compact than fat.
Right. So for the listener, he's suggesting that, you know, a faster metabolism isn't just about fitting into smaller clothes.
Right.
It's about having more energy for your day.
Exactly.
Enjoying a wider variety of foods without constant worry and ultimately feeling better.
Absolutely.
In your own skin.
Yeah, I think that's a key takeaway.
Yeah.
It's not just about aesthetics.
Right. Yeah.
It's about how you feel.
Right.
And how you function.
Yeah.
In your daily life.
Okay. So we've talked about kind of the power of the mind. Yeah. And, you know, really setting yourself up for success.
Right.
Now we're getting into